All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to dive into something I know can be incredibly confusing, the nature of the narcissist. It's this personality type that seems to be full of contradictions, right? But if we break it all down, if we look at the key traits and behaviors, a really clear pattern starts to show itself. So, let's get right into it.
So, here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to break it down into 4 main parts. First up, we'll talk about that big contradiction you see on the outside, the one that confuses so many of us. Then, we're going to look at the actual tools of deception they use. After that, we'll peel back the mask to really understand what's going on inside, in their unstable inner world. And finally, we'll connect all those dots to see the destructive pattern that just seems to follow them everywhere.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the first piece of the puzzle, and honestly, it's often the most confusing part for people. It's this huge contradiction of control. And this is really all about that massive gap, the gap between the face they show the world and what's really truly hiding just beneath the surface.
And wow, this quote, this really just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? They want to control everything around them without bearing any responsibility for the chaos they create. Think about that for a second. This deep, burning need to control everything, the stories, the people, the outcomes, but at the exact same time, a complete refusal to own any of the mess that comes from it. It's this central paradox that really fuels so much of what they do.
So you have to wonder, right? How do they pull that off? How do they live with that contradiction? Well, it's all through a performance, a really, really carefully constructed one. Over here, you've got the fake persona, right? This is the show they put on for everyone. It's all about projecting strength, being in total control. It's a perfect charade. But then you have the true self, the thing they are desperate to hide. And our source material describes this self as impaired, incomplete, just riddled with negativity and deep, deep insecurity.
And this is such a critical point to understand. Maintaining that charade, just imagine the work involved. It takes an immense amount of effort and energy day in and day out. It's this constant, draining job of keeping all those negative parts of their true self pushed down, hidden away. You can imagine how exhausting that has to be.
So if the goal is to keep up that facade at all costs, you got to ask, what tools are they using? How do they actually do it? Well, that leads us right into our next section, the art of deception. And the number one tool in their toolbox? Manipulation. But here's the thing we really have to get our heads around. For most people, manipulation might be, a last resort, something you do in a desperate situation. Not for the narcissist. For them, it's not just a tool for emergencies. The source makes it clear. It is a fundamental necessity. It's literally a way of life. It's how they breathe.
And a huge part of that manipulation, of course, is lying. Just pathological lying. But they're often very good at it. The source actually breaks down the anatomy of their lies. See, they don't just pull fiction out of thin air. That's too easy to spot. No, what they do is they start by weaving in some real truths, little facts you can't deny, and then they build a believable but completely false story around that kernel of truth. It makes the whole thing so much harder for the victim to pick apart and question.
Okay, so we've seen what they do, the control, the manipulation, and we've seen how they do it, the lies, the facade, but now we get to the million-dollar question. Why? Why all this effort? It's time to peel back that mask for real and take a look at the unstable inner world that's driving all of this.
This is really the central question, isn't it? What on earth is going on inside a person that makes them need this level of control and deception just to get through the day?
Well, get ready, because the answer our source material gives is pretty shocking. The fundamental reason behind all of this behavior, it's that their character development, their emotional growth, is basically impaired and incomplete. In fact, their psychological and emotional age is stalled. It's stuck, somewhere between the ages of 4 and 9 years old.
So let that sink in for a minute. You have this stark contrast. On the outside, you're looking at the body of a grown adult. They look mature. But on the inside, psychologically, you're dealing with the mind of a small child. And suddenly it all starts to make a weird kind of sense, right? The refusal to take responsibility, the sudden temper tantrums, that totally self-centered view of the world, it's all there. It's a really profound developmental impairment.
And because there's no fully developed core self, you get this really powerful description from the source. They are called Quicksilver beings, who jump from one personality and mask to another. Think about Quicksilver or Mercury. It's impossible to hold on to. It just shifts and changes. That's them. There's no stable, solid identity. They just shapeshift, jumping from one mask to the next, whatever the moment calls for. There's just no solid ground underneath.
So, what happens when this incredibly unstable inner world crashes into the outside world? Into relationships, into families, into workplaces? Well, that leads us to our final section, the completely inevitable pattern of destruction and the impact it has on everyone around them.
So how do they prop up that incredibly fragile ego we talked about? Since they have no real internal strength of their own, our source explains that they have to get it from somewhere else, and they do. A narcissist literally derives their strength from the weaknesses of their victims. It's almost like an energy transfer. They have to make other people feel small so that they can feel big. They need it.
And this whole dynamic just makes any real growth impossible. For most of us, right, we mess up, we learn from it, we adapt our behavior, and hopefully we grow. But for the narcissist, that feedback loop is broken. They just repeat the exact same mistakes over and over again. Instead of changing, their solution is just to discard the person they've hurt and find a new one to start the whole destructive cycle all over again.
And that really brings us right back to where we started, full circle. It all comes back to the core engine driving this whole machine. The control, the deception, the pattern of destruction, every single bit of it is in service of one goal, hiding that true impaired self from the world. And as this quote reminds us, that is a full-time job. It is a lifelong performance that requires a truly immense amount of effort and energy every single day.
So I want to leave you with this final thought.
We've talked a lot about the damage done to others, and that's absolutely crucial. But just for a moment, think about this. What is the true cost? The crushing internal cost of maintaining a lifelong charade like this. Can you imagine what it must be like to live an entire existence that's not built on a real, stable you, but on a performance that you can never, ever let stop?